Jen, how much of people's health problems today actually come back to gut health and blood sugar issues?
Yeah, so it's really a huge percentage of it. And I'd like to frame it in this way. So if someone has chronically high insulin, that tends to lead towards a lot of inflammation, right? And then if there's a lot of inflammation, we know where those kind of things go. They impact ovarian hormones, they impact thyroid signaling, fat storage, all those kind of things. And then if you combine that in addition with gut health and with an imbalanced, I mean, there's a lot of things that come with gut health, but imbalanced microbiome, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit more too, what gut health really entails. But in someone's gut, there's the nutrient absorption, immune signaling, hormone metabolism. The gut controls a lot more than what people realize. A lot of them just think of things with the bathroom, but it's so much more than that. So the gut bacteria also regulate estrogen metabolism, and that's a big one in women. I notice when they have estrogen dominance or hormone imbalance, many times it comes down to an improper balance in the gut. So when both the gut and the blood sugar are off, that's when there's like a ripple effect, and that's when a lot of symptoms arise, such as fatigue, brain fog, a lot of hormonal issues like PCOS. Something I had, and a lot of my clients tend to have. And then just overall metabolic dysfunction, like I like to call it the metabolic dysfunction junk drawer. Like we don't have an actual diagnosis name for it, but there's a lot of symptoms that just arise with that. So a lot of these things tend to come from either both or one or the other.
So to come back to the first point that you were saying with chronically elevated insulin, can you expand on that? Like, what is that? If you've never heard of it, and how does it end up occurring? Are you born with it? Is it genetic, or is it lifestyle factors and environment?
Well, from what I've experienced, I mean, we can have a genetic disposition towards it if our parents have had it, but it's the whole analogy we hear where the gun's loaded, what pulls the trigger, right? So, what is insulin? Insulin is a hormone secreted by our pancreas in response to elevated blood sugar or glucose in the blood, right? We're only supposed to have a certain amount of glucose in our blood. So, anytime we consume carbohydrates, glucose, anything like that that rises our blood glucose, our pancreas will release insulin to either to remove the glucose from our blood and store it in various places, utilize it in cells, utilize it in our muscles, anything like that. So chronically high insulin is when the we develop something called insulin resistance, and our cells are no longer responding to that insulin signaling to utilize the glucose, shift it out of the blood, and put it into its proper destination of where it should be going. So the insulin stays high because it's not being utilized. So I like to clarify that because a lot of people freak out about insulin, period. Like I come from the low carb community and ketogenic carnivores, so a lot of them see, I never want to see insulin elevated. And that's like a whole nother topic we can get into. But a temporary rise in insulin is physiologically normal. It's when it's chronically elevated, your fasting insulin is elevated. That's when it's signaling something's wrong.
Right. So is that just from eating, a very simple way to put it would be like, is that just continuing to eat too much carbohydrates, too much sugar, and potentially not burning it off, or not being active enough to make it go around the body? Is it just that, or is there other things happening too?
So I will confess that's what I used to believe. That's
Well,
where I was, yeah,
that's the first thing that comes to mind. You think, oh, well, then
mhm,
you're probably just having too much
just
for the insulin to bring it back down.
right. Yeah, and I used to believe that was where I was at until I started getting clients where even though they were zero carb, they were consuming no carbs. They were eating a very well controlled carnivore diet, and they still had high fasting insulin. So I started exploring and realizing this isn't making sense. Why would they have insulin? And then some of them will say, well, they have stevia or they have what, and it's like, no, I had clients that were legit only animal products, nothing. Like we cut everything out. I said, okay, something's not right here. What's going on? So I started looking into this more last year, early last year, and just really digging down. And so to answer your question, no, it's not just that people are over consuming carbohydrates. And I've experimented that myself. I stopped carnivore ketogenic and I eat approximately 200 grams of carbs a day. I'm not an avid athlete. I go to the gym a few times a week and my fasting insulin is a 4. And so it's definitely not that. But I look at it either it's a gut issue or yes, you're not moving around. If you're eating 200, 300, 500 grams of carbs a day and you're just sitting on your butt all day, yeah, that's going to be a problem. But the biggest thing is the inflammation. And a lot of times it comes down to just toxin overload within the gut and then the signaling issue where it's like we need to heal that insulin resistance.
So if you're helping someone with this, and let's say they have chronically elevated insulin, they're lifting weights 3 or 4 times a week, they're active, anywhere between 6 to 10,000 steps per day on average, they're getting sleep and all that kind of stuff. And you're saying so, and they're not eating too much sugar or too many calories. So all those boxes are ticked. Is that when you start heading down to the gut? Okay, this is going to be another issue. What sort of checklist do you go through as someone has kind of ticked all the obvious boxes of just being a healthy, regular person, trying to improve their fitness? Where do you start to look now? You mentioned toxin overloads or toxic overload and gut health. But once again, gut health is just, it's just become this term where you're like, oh, I'm working on my gut health. And it's like, well, what the hell does that even mean? Are you eating sauerkraut?
Yeah,
So,
no, yeah, it's true.
so where do you start to look?
Yeah, so if they've checked the boxes and they are sleeping properly, they're getting quality sleep, not just quantity. They feel rested when they wake up. They're, hitting their protein goals, proper balance of macronutrients of both fats and carbs. If they are working out, getting their steps in, they're not a sedentary athlete. They don't go to the gym and then sit on their butt all day, right? They're still moving throughout the day. It's interesting. I don't think I've had a client like that, but if I did, my next step would be either to also check on circadian health. Are they going outside? Are they getting proper sunlight? Because that signaling also helps with insulin resistance, insulin sensitivity, leptin sensitivity, and all those things. So if all of those things were checked off, that's when I would say, yeah, let's look at your gut. Let's see what your microbiome balance is. Is there a dysbiosis happening? Are you getting proper digestion? So micronutrients, I think, is something a lot of people don't pay attention to as well. You can be hitting your carbs, you can be hitting your fat, your protein, but if you're not getting proper B vitamins, proper vitamin D from the sun, from your foods, minerals, all those kind of things, then there's still an imbalance going on. So I would look at the micronutrients first before the gut test, and then unless they have obvious symptoms. Now, what are some of those symptoms that, you make a good point. Gut health is just this like term now, like, oh, I take a probiotic, I'm working on my gut health. So there's digestive and there's non-digestive clues. The digestive clues are ones that are obvious: bloating, heartburn, gas, irregular bowel movements, just feeling full too quickly, or just never being able to feel full enough. The other ones too, so a lot of people, if I say like, let's check your gut, and they'll say, I don't have any of those symptoms. Well, there's non-digestive symptoms as well. We have food sensitivities. Are there certain things that you're not having an anaphylactic reaction, but you're sensitive? Maybe you start getting some sinus issues. Maybe your breathing is labored. Maybe your heart rate increases, depending on whatever food you're eating. Brain fog after meals is another one. Basically, any symptoms between 30 minutes to 4 hours after a meal can signal some kind of, food sensitivity, some kind of gut imbalance going on. Skin issues is a big one as well. Eczema, acne, definitely we need to help clear that not just gut, but also liver detoxification as well. I kind of put the two together. So the stomach, the gut, the liver, PMS, and then the nutrients, like I mentioned. So the estrogen dominance is another big one where, especially for women, if our liver is not detoxing properly, or our gut is not working properly, we tend to recirculate the estrogen. And this was something that happened to me when I was carnivore, where my estrogen was starting to get elevated after doing that for a bit. Once I switched and brought in a lot of healthy carbs, ones that help with liver support and estrogen detoxification, it went boom. And like it was such a beautiful, easy transition. So yeah.
So there's a couple of things I want to touch on. I want to touch on the estrogen dominance thing because I haven't really heard of that. We'll come back to that. But the first thing that I want to talk about is the micronutrients, and I think this is where the bodybuilding, hobby lifter, flexible dieting people have kind of run into now. And this is myself too, because I used to be very, so originally it was if it fits your macros. Let's just eat whatever we want. Let's have donuts, let's have ice cream, let's have cake. As long as we hit our protein and we hit our, whatever carbs and fats that we want to, happy days, we're all good. And that works for a little bit until you run into issues. And I never personally ran into issues, but I did find that I felt better when I followed certain structures within that flexibility. So I kind of pulled back on that and have felt better. Even though I wasn't feeling bad, there were times where I had more energy when I ate differently. And things like going to the bathroom, more regular, or, the consistency of your stools and things like that, that was changing as well, which I was never really aware of until my wife went through a whole gut health journey, let's say. And I was becoming very aware of things that I was never aware of before. I was just hitting macros and just happy days, protein, lifting, sleep, repeat type of thing, which is, it's very easy because you don't have to worry about things. You just worry about protein and calories and it's just happy days. It's so much easier. But I think that run has come to an end. And I feel like now that most people are aware in the online fitness content or just the fitness industry of calories and macros and protein and all that stuff. And now I think this year especially, and even last year, it's like the year of gut health, the year of of micronutrients, of what is in the calories. It's not just calories in versus calories out, because that is a massive component that a lot of people don't nail and they still need to work on. But once you get there, and it doesn't take long, you track your calories for a bit, you become aware, you need to dive into more macronutrients or even smaller things like meal timing and the composition of those meals. And that's where I am too, trying to lean into more micronutrient dense foods and not necessarily running away from full fat or full cream milk or higher calorie alternatives that I used to. I would be like, no, I need the low fat yogurt. I need the low fat milk. I need low fat everything. Get fat away from me because it's so high in calories. So I had that phase, but I'm coming full circle. This year is like my full fat year where I'm like going like full fat Greek yogurt, full fat milk. I'm adding fats in. And I think that this micronutrient conversation is important. This is a long way of asking, what are some specific things that people can do to improve the micronutrient profile of their diet?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is educate yourself and start learning. We have the internet at the palm of our hands where you can just go online and say, what micronutrients are in these various foods. Maybe pick your favorite food and just look it up. If your favorite food's ground beef, you can do so much. It's such a versatile food and it has so many different micronutrients. So going in there and looking it up. But I would definitely say the other easiest aspect besides just Googling it is downloading a fitness tracker. Chronometer is a very popular one that tracks your micronutrients. So track your food for a week. I don't say just a day because we have different meals throughout the week, right? Track your food throughout the week and each day look at those micronutrients. Look at the foods that you chose and see which ones are you deficient in. And keeping in mind those are the RDA standards. So, it's like the minimal so you don't get disease. So a little bit above would be ideal. But that's probably the best bet is start there. And then, let's say vitamin C you're lacking. Okay, what foods have vitamin C? Which ones have B1? Which ones there's like a huge B1 deficiency going around. The folate, that's one I always find low in almost every person, even if they're carnivore and eating all the meats and the eggs, they're low in folate. So I would say that would be the first step to do, and then yeah, just start adding them in. But it does become a balancing act because you can't just add them in if you're also looking at your macros. So I can see how some people would get either frustrated or want to give up because like, gosh, now I have to meet the micros and the macros and all this, and it's like, well, one step at a time, right? Start finding them, start tweaking, and it's not as hard as people make it out to seem.
So you said there's a B1 deficiency. Have you picked up any other things that are consistently low in people? Like, I have heard that a lot of people, most people that train should be supplementing magnesium because they're quite often deficient in that. Is there any other things that you've seen working with people?
Magnesium is a big one for sure, and it's also because we're just living in a chronically stressed environment with everything over the past 6 years, pretty much just like been nonstop. So when we're stressed, whether it's physiologically, psychologically, emotionally, it tends to drain our magnesium, and magnesium is needed for a lot of other micronutrients absorption, utilization, etc. So magnesium, folate is a big one that, like I said, I always see people depleted in folate. From a functional perspective, I should say, you go get your blood work done with your doctor, he's going to say it's fine. But those two, and then I wouldn't say this one's a direct measurement, but more of an indirect would be I will see lab markers show that they are under eating and under caloried. So it's not a direct like vitamin or mineral or nutrient, but that's probably one of the most common patterns I see.
And is that mostly in women? Because I know that that is,
Yeah.
like that's a real, like from coaching women and men as well, but that's a real big, I don't want to overeat, I don't want to gain weight type of thing. And if you think of it from a very obvious perspective, if your calories are lower, then the micronutrients within that overall calorie intake is going to be lower too, just because you're not consuming enough to get the adequate amount of the micronutrients. Even if you have, let's say, the right ratios, the quantity of that will be too low.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
for sure. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, you go.
Yeah, I was going to say it is mostly women. Some of the time, most of the times with my clients, when that happens, though, it's not necessarily I'm trying to keep it low. They just don't have the hunger for it. They have trained their body to not be hungry past 1,200 calories, 1,300 calories. And so it's taking time, to rebuild that signal to be hungry, to satiate, or to be hungry and to fill those energy requirements.
Yeah, I found that a lot too. Like I will prescribe something in terms of calories, if we just talk about calories, that is, low from my perspective, and then from their perspective, it's very high. I
Yeah.
just can't get there. I'm like, it's 1,600, it's 1,800 calories. That could
That
be a
was
me.
me.
Yeah, well,
I won't lie.
yeah, it takes practice. It takes, like I was saying, the whole, oh, I eat low fat this, I eat low fat that. You also have to look at the foods that you're trying to consume as well, because if you're struggling to get over 1,200 calories, maybe you should park the salads and park the really high volume foods for a minute just to get in some more calorie dense foods. Still, which still can be nutrient dense. There's a balance. I'm not saying you need to just go and smash McDonald's so you can get your calories up, but I think often because we need to lose weight, it's like, okay, there's just a lot of kale and a lot of spinach and a lot of lettuce that will just fill you up
Yeah.
and literally prevent you from overeating because of the amount of fiber.